Hi, this is Miss Kennedy again. This time I am on the campus of the Ohio State University, and I am at one of my favorite buildings at Ohio State University, and that is Orton Hall. Now today's reading is going to be kind of a brief one, but I did want to share this incredibly beautiful building with you, and I'll explain why. So, when you look at Orton Hall, it just absolutely looks like it is the place where the Department of Geology is housed. See? Orton Hall, Geology Department. And if you're wondering why is it that we are spending time at the Geology Department when we're talking about Rachel Carson's The Sea Around Us, there's a very good explanation for that. Today's reading is from a chapter that is called The Long Snowfall. I like to subtitle it My Sediments Exactly, because science teachers like to use bad word puns. And I'm wearing a shirt that says Women in Science, and Rachel Carson is indeed one of the women on my shirt. But I want to talk to you briefly about another woman who was very important to me when I was growing up. When I was in the 6th grade, I brought a book home from the library that was called The Giants of Geology. And my mom said, "You're not going to read that, are you?" And I said, "Of course I am, Mom. There are scientists in there that are women like me." And that was the first time in 6th grade when I discovered that there were women who were scientists. And one of the women who wrote the book, Giants of Geology, that was published in 1952, she and her husband, his name was Carol Lane Fenton, and her name was Mildred Adams Fenton, and they put together a group of geologists who had been very important in understanding how the world was put together, and I just fell in love with geology the more that I read that book. So again, what does geology have to do with Rachel Carson's The Sea Around Us? Well, The Long Snowfall is about the sediments that fall to the bottom of the ocean and what happens to them. So, let's listen to what Rachel Carson has to say. "For the sediments are the materials of the most stupendous snowfall the earth has ever seen. It began when the first rains fell on the barren rocks and set in motion the forces of erosion. It was accelerated when living creatures developed in the surface waters, and the discarded little shells of lime or silica that had encased them in life began to drift downward to the bottom. Silently, endlessly, with the deliberation of earth processes that can afford to be slow because they have so much time for completion, the accumulation of the sediments has proceeded. So little in a year, or, in a human lifetime, but so enormous in an amount in the life of the earth and the sea." The Ohio State University is also in line with the Columbus International Airport. "The sediments are a sort of epic poem of the earth. When we are wise enough, perhaps we can read in them all of past history, for all is written here, in the nature of the materials that compose them and in the arrangement of their successive layers. The sediments reflect all that has happened in the waters above them and on the surrounding lands. The dramatic and catastrophic in Earth history have left their trace in the ocean sediments. The outpouring of volcanoes, the advance and retreat of the ice, the searing aridity of desert lands, the sweeping destruction of floods. Now, the book of the sediments has been opened only within the lifetime of the present generation of scientists, with the most exciting progress in collecting and deciphering samples made since 1945. Early oceanographers could scrape up surface layers of sediment from the sea bottom with dredges, but what was needed was an instrument operated on the principle of an apple corer that could be driven vertically into the bottom to remove a long sample or core in which the order of the different layers was undisturbed. And of course, they did develop such an instrument, and we use core samples of the ocean floor. We use core samples of the ice at the North and South Pole to figure out what happened in the past. Now, before these techniques were developed, we could only guess at the thickness of the sediment blanket over the floor of the sea. We might have expected the amount to be vast if we thought back through the ages of gentle, unending fall, one sand grain at a time, one fragile shell after another. Here, a shark's tooth, there, a meteorite fragment, but the whole continuing persistently, relentlessly, endlessly. It is, of course, a process similar to that which has built up the layers of rock that help to make our mountains, for they too were once soft sediments under the shallow seas that have overflowed the continents from time to time. The sediments eventually became consolidated and cemented, and as the seas retreated again, gave the continents their thick covering layers of sedimentary rocks. Sedimentary rocks like some that I have in my collection.